slowly on considering any other legislation and would ignore House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's efforts on a fourth relief bill. In an interview with the Washington Post, McConnell said, quote, she needs to stand down on the notion that we're going to go along with taking advantage of the crisis to do things that are unrelated to the crisis. McConnell further said he is concerned with how Congress would pay for another wave of federal spending. Pelosi responded in a statement saying, in part, quote, the victims of the coronavirus pandemic cannot wait. It is moving faster than the leader may have suspected, and even he has said that some things should wait for the next bill. Joining us now, the top-ranking Democrat in the Senate, Minority Leader Chuck Schumer of New York.
Senator Schumer, thanks so much for being with us. Let's begin by just asking him for an update. I know you're staying in touch with people running the hospitals, the doctors, the nurses, people on the front lines of this epidemic who have been hit by it worse in New York State than any other region in the world. Tell us how things are going.
Well, New Yorkers, you know, we love to be together. The fact that there is so much uncertainty in so much, what are the exact symptoms? How long do you get it? I just heard today that if you're on a respirator, the chances of you surviving are small from one of the leading heads of one of our hospitals. I asked doctors a question, for instance, can you get it again or you get immune? They don't even know. And then the other thing that plagues New Yorkers, maybe more than anybody else, is isolation. We like to be together. We like to touch each other, feel each other, be close. We love riding the subways and seeing the whole diversity of our city spread before us in one subway car. So that hurts too. But New Yorkers are tough. I've been on the phone with just about everybody, and we'll get through this. Before 9/11, they said New York was finished as a city. It'll never be finished as a city. But can I make two quick points here that are important for New York and for the country? And that is, we need to do two things immediately. Today, the unemployment numbers will probably be staggering, very bad. We need those unemployment checks to start going out in the next 2 weeks. As you mentioned, Mika, we passed a very good, strong bill aimed at workers first, creating a Marshall Plan for hospitals. But now the administration has to get the money out quickly to those unemployed people, or they're going to really be stuck, and their businesses will be stuck as well, their small businesses and others. And the second thing we need, this is terrible. My governor, who's doing a great job, my mayor, I think he's doing a very fine job. They're calling all over the place for equipment, for ventilators or for masks or for PPE. And that's because the system that the administration has put in place is horrible. I am sending a letter to the president. We need him to put in charge a czar of the whole production and distribution of these materials under the DPA. That should be a military man. The military knows how to get lots of materials in lots of different places quickly. Somebody who knows quartermastering, who knows logistics, who knows command and control. I have to tell you, I spoke to Professor Mr. Navarro, who was in charge. I was very disappointed. He's a good man. He's a professor. He knows a lot about China. He knows nothing about this. So I am calling on the administration to put in charge of both production and distribution of materials, a military man as czar under the DPA. As you may remember, I called the president 2 weeks ago. I said, enact the DPA. He said I would. And then 3 hours later, he changed his mind. We need someone unpolitical to produce the materials more quickly, including supply chains, and to distribute them to the places that are most needed, to not have my governor have to call up California and compete with other states. My mayor told me he called Sweden to try and get some ventilators. That is not how this should be run. So we need the unemployment checks to go out very fast, and we need a real czar, a military person, to be in charge of both production and distribution of desperately needed medical supplies immediately.
So you had a conference call with the president a week or so ago where you encouraged him to implement the Defense Production Act, and he acted on your request. I've talked about New York, how it's the worst. If it's not the worst right now, hit region, it will be, if you look at the projections, very soon across the world. But Could you give the president a call again and talk to him about the need to have a military man or woman in charge of this production effort? And do you think the president might be open to that?
Well, I hope so, because we desperately need it. I will call him again. I'm sending him a letter this morning, and he has taken my calls. I'll give him credit. And look, the president was way behind the eight ball in so much of this. He didn't see the need. We were way behind in testing. This idea that Mitch McConnell said that impeachment was diverting us, ridiculous. I called for a national emergency on January 26th. You know, while impeachment was going on. We can do two things at once, and this virus was already raging in China. So the president on testing and now on distribution and production behind the eight ball. But let's hope he's seen now, finally. You know, sometimes he thinks if he says something, it becomes true. So he says it's a hoax. He says it's not much. He thinks it's true. This virus is stronger than anybody. And we have to all be together and try to solve this problem. And I will demand that of the president. I'm sending him a letter for right now, this morning, on this.
Senator Schumer, it's Willie Geist. Yeah, it's been said of you that you speak New York in a way that Donald Trump can understand, and so that sometimes your messages get through better than anybody. So let's hope he does listen to you. We just had James O'Neill on the show, the former police commissioner of New York City. He's been brought in by the mayor of New York City to effectively do the job you're talking about just in New York, to get this chain, the supply chain into New York City. What you're talking about, a military leader, could be a business leader, somebody like Fred Smith, who, of course, was a Marine himself, is a Marine, and founded FedEx and knows better than anybody how to get things where they need to be. I guess the question right now for Americans is, and I sound like a broken record, they are aware now of the needs in the hospital for all this equipment. They say, this is the United States of America. We have great companies who can move quickly. Why aren't they getting into the hospitals right now? What is the problem? What's the holdup?
And the two problems are, one, still production is not ramped up enough, because production isn't that easy. You can't go to one place and say, you make this. You got to make sure their suppliers are available as well. But even worse is distribution. I don't know who's in charge of distribution. So you have this spectacle where governors and mayors are just reaching out and hunting and pecking for things. A military man, it could be a business leader, but someone who knows logistics. Professor Navarro, in all due respect, he's a professor. He hasn't done this before. I don't have anything against him, but they ought to replace him with somebody who knows how to do this. And then the distribution would work. So today it might be New York that gets all the stuff they need, the PPEs. Tomorrow it might be somewhere else. If New York, praise God, we manage to, by social distancing, reduce the rate. But we need someone in charge, and it's not just going to be PPEs and masks. We're going to find we're going to need other things as well. And then secondly, those unemployment checks have got to get out quickly. The administration has got to move heaven and earth to get those checks out. I was glad to hear last night, in response to our letter, we had 41 Dems, they're going to send their $1,000 checks to Social Security people and others who haven't filed tax returns. But the unemployment checks are the most important thing. They augment and are larger over the period of time than the $1,200 check.
Okay, so
Mika, just
Yeah,
go ahead, Willie.
I was just Joe and Mika, to both of you, that number that we've been looking for just crossed, and you'll forgive me if my jaw's on the ground. U.S. weekly jobless claims total 6.6 million versus 3.1 million expected. 6.6 million unemployment claims were made in this country last week.
Think of that in human terms, of each individual. Most of them have worked hard and long at their companies. They have pride in their work, and they're gone through no fault of their own. At least, you know, our unemployment on steroids, which we passed, we had to force the Republicans to do it, says you're going to get your full pay or close to it from the federal government for 4 months, and you can be furloughed by your company, not, you know, kicked off. And that means that when, God willing, we beat this virus, the company can reconstitute. Companies, you know, big and little, are organic. You know, a restaurant, it has a chef, it has a maitre d', it has some waiters. Right. They're a team. And if we can bring them back together, because the federal government is paying for their salaries, but at the same time they're only furloughed by their employees and stay on the books, we can recover much more quickly. So we got to get this plan up and running.
All right, again, U.S. weekly jobless claims has hit 6.65 million. And Senator, I want to go back to the president using the full force of the DPA. I know that you want him to appoint a czar who perhaps could do that. But the bottom line is, it stands with him. Is there any logical reason why he would not be using that? My understanding is it streamlines, testing and supplies, getting directly to the American people would make it go faster, which literally amounts to people's lives being saved. What's the logical reason to not use it?
I have no idea because, I called him about 2 weeks ago and I said, use it. He said, that's a great idea. And he hollered. He must have been in the Oval Office. I was on the phone. I was still in Washington. And he said, get the DPA enacted. Get it going. And they said, yes. And then 3-4 hours later, he said, no. I don't know who whispered in his ear or what got into his head. I do not know a single reason during this emergency crisis why we shouldn't invoke the DPA. It will work. We put $1 billion in COVID-3 just to help them implement that, for this military man, or it could be a Fred Smith, military and business, but someone who knows logistics, someone who knows non-political, how to get from place to place and thing to thing. Why he hasn't done it, I don't have any good reason.
So, Senator Schumer, will you be speaking to Mitch McConnell today, who obviously is dragging his feet on moving towards another relief bill and is attacking Nancy Pelosi for whatever reason? In light of the new number, the 6.6 million number, the shocking number, will you be talking to Mitch McConnell today?
Yeah, well, I could talk to him. Look, I think we need a COVID-4 for a lot of reasons. One reason is we have to deal with the immediate. We're not going to solve the economic crisis till we solve the health crisis, but we haven't solved that. And there are lots of holes that we'll have to fill that we may not even know today. So we need it. But then we do have to get our economy going long range. I've spoken to a lot of these economic experts, and they think even after, God willing, we've erased COVID, for the time being, the economy is going to take a long time to recover. So, when you look at something like a infrastructure bill, that's for the long term. But in COVID-4, we'll still have to focus on the health crisis. I hope we can get, for instance, hazard pay enacted retroactively for all these brave nurses and doctors and health workers who are going and risking their lives, and make that mandatory in the COVID-4. But there are also going to be long-term things. I think we have to do it. And I hope that Leader McConnell will see the light. He's been reluctant across the board. When we wanted unemployment on steroids, he said no initially. When we wanted to have oversight of this $400 billion slush fund, he said no. When we wanted to have state and local relief to the governments, he said no. But, we pushed. We didn't let him have his way when we voted no. And then it passed 96-0. Which showed the Congress, Democrats and Republicans, the American people coming together. I hope that'll happen again and he'll see the light.
All right, Senator.